It's cold outside.
It is freezing,
Like-
but I like it.
You like the cold?
I do like it. I don't like when I am dumb and don't wear gloves and a hat, which I do
Yeah.
on the regular. Like I go out to my car and I'm this morning coming here, I realized I need to scrape my car off. We have 2 cars. We
Yeah.
barely ever drive the one. And it's kind
And
of
you
been
guys
dusted off here and there, but like it definitely had some ice on it. And I was like, I didn't bring gloves.
You guys don't use your garage either.
No.
You have
no.
a 3-car garage?
I don't even think
and you
that
don't
my...
use it?
No, it's a 2.5.
A 2.
But it's like way down. It's got this weird angle to it. And my tractor's in there.
Yeah, that makes
You know,
sense.
you got to protect the
tractor.
real.
That's what I hate about mine is like my big riding lawnmower takes up a quarter of my garage.
Yeah.
It's just in the way.
First world suburb problems, I guess.
Well, I had it in the shed out back for the longest time, and
now it's occupied by chickens.
Right. Well, that and we have like the shed gets infested with wolf spiders.
Wolves. I thought you were going to say wolves.
Wolf No, the spider version. In the summer when all the eggs hatch and everything, they take over, which is great for the chickens because it's free food.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful.
But for a tractor, when I'm trying to ride it, and then you feel something crawling on your leg, and there's a big ass spider on your leg, that's not fun.
That's perfect. Perfect.
I don't want that, so I keep it covered in the garage.
Yeah.
But it's cold outside. This is like the 4th day in a row of it snowing too. We had that big winter vortex thing that came through the entire country, and
doing chickens in the winter is something that nobody talks to you about.
No.
When you're like, yeah, you should get chickens, and oh, by the way, you are gonna be and your backyard out here, you don't have too long of a walk to your chickens.
No.
I've kind of set myself up to, like, I've got a little bit more of a walk, and in the summertime, it's not a big deal. It's fine. In the wintertime, when you're like lifting your feet way up and doing the whole thing, then you got to get back there, and that's it's fine for me. But the 3-year-old that wants to come back there with me, where the snow is actually up to her knees, and she's like, "Dad, please carry me." I'm like,
Now you're rucking through the snow.
I've got a 50-pound bag of feed. I'm walking back there, and I've got a 3-year-old in my other arm. It's
well, it's good that you're built like a Viking, so that helps.
You know, and I'm looking at my 3-year-old, and I'm like, "Don't you have any sympathy for what I'm doing right now?" And I'm like, she'll like yell at me while she's up there, you know. And I'm like, fine. I just chuck her into the snow. See you later. You're gonna be
too much.
You ungrateful little. Dad, you're bouncing too much. I have to go pee. Welcome to CockTalk.
Yeah.
Well,
it's cold outside, but it's still morning here. When we're talking about cocktails on this, it was like, well, do we really want to be drinking at 9 a.m?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So today we have...
The best part is we don't have a problem.
No.
I
don't think.
No.
Maybe. No. I don't honestly, I don't even know what this is called. What was it? A Boozy bourbon coffee? Is that what it was called?
Sure.
That we found?
Sure.
I don't know. We just found a random recipe that we liked. A Boozy bourbon coffee, which we're really excited about. It's an iced coffee. Just using a regular cold brew, a 10-hour cold brew.
Yep.
So a nice long process there for the cold brew, but
well, the cold brew and the bourbon go well together because the cold brew process takes the bitterness out of the coffee a little bit, whereas like you're gonna get that with your bourbon.
Yeah.
So you don't want to double up on the bitter. It can be a little bit too much for me. When I go, well, do I want to drink just straight black coffee with bourbon? It's not as satisfying and as smooth as a cold brew might be. But then again, the cream that is just
creme de la creme,
just melting through there.
Yeah. So for the bourbon, we used Ugly Dog, which is out of Chelsea, Michigan. So something that's local to the state that we're in, which is great. I think that we're going to try to highlight mostly Michigan brews and bourbons and things like that when possible.
All right. Thanks for telling me about that.
Yeah. I mean, when possible. I mean,
that's great.
At the same time,
it's
though,
perfect.
There's so much stuff coming out of Kentucky that's just like, man,
well,
we got to try it all.
Yeah.
We literally have to try every bourbon. That's the point.
Every bourbon. That's the real reason for the show. We're going to tell you all about homesteading and, parenting conspiracies. And it's all under the guise of wanting to try every bourbon.
That's it. It's a way for a business write-off, right?
That's right. That's right.
But it's a salted caramel flavored bourbon, Kentucky style bourbon, which I was really excited about. I'm not usually a fan of flavored bourbons, but I think for this in particular cocktail, it made a lot of sense. So the salted caramel flavoring. So it's the actual recipe itself is 4 ounces of cold brew, 2 ounces of bourbon, 3 dashes of agnostic bitters. Agnostic? Is that?
They believe there's a God, but it like doesn't. It's like this bitters. Coffee.
What are they actually?
Coffee God is.
I know it's aromatic, but what's the brand?
Oh, I don't know what the brand is.
I always say agnostic because that's kind of what it looks like, but I don't think that's the actual name for it. 3 dashes of aromatic bitters.
There you go.
And then
whatever bitter you choose, right? Like you could really do any kind of bitter.
You could have your own religious opinion on your bitters.
It's just going to draw some of those flavors out a little more.
Yeah, and then we've got the whipping cream on top, heavy cream that we whipped.
The heavy cream.
Heavy cream with and it's a 1/4 ounce of maple syrup in it as well. So
this is a sweet drink.
It's a sweet drink.
Yep.
For a sweet man.
Oh, cheers. Oh my. I think the first sip of this is going to be all heavy whipping cream.
Pretty much, yep. So you got to sip it more than once.
Hopefully it's in my beard for the whole show. It's in yours.
Soon I could grow a beard and to let it be in the...
Well, give it another 5 years. You'll be there.
I've been saying that for the past 10 years.
Yeah. Well, you're... when I think about hair growing on a person when they're a little bit older, you start to you get the old man with the hair growing out of their ears, like the extra long nose hairs, because for some reason it was only in the last 10-15 years that people went, oh, I can get a little guy up there and take care of those. Why is it that some old men have like a freaking rope coming out of their nose? How is that? If I have the
slightest... They made tiny scissors back then, didn't they?
I'm sure they did.
I thought they had tiny scissors, but I guess they just didn't.
They make tweezers. I mean, that hurt like a bitch, but...
I guess in the general thing, if you're working a coal mine all day, you're not really worried about how long your nose
Well, maybe maybe they're getting burned off in the mine.
Oh, maybe.
As if every old man used to work in a coal mine.
That's what I assume. That's my assumption for every old man. If you're over the age of 65... You either fought in a world war or you worked in a coal mine.
A world war. A world war.
Yeah.
Well, seeing as the last world war ended, almost 70,
in your 80s to be
80 years ago now.
Least.
45, 46 is when World War II ended.
Yeah.
That's about almost 80 years ago. So in order to fight in that war,
you'd have to be almost 100.
Let's say you enlisted very early and you were 14. You're 94.
They did 14 years old for enlistments?
No, but like some 16.
16 or 17, right?
Well, 18, but some people would lie about their age. Right? Like they believe in the cause and they did their thing. So
you'd have to be really old.
I
remember insulting...
There's not many of them left.
I remember insulting my grandparents one time because I thought... Because my grandfather was in the Army. He was a tank commander, sharpshooter. And I thought for sure he had fought in World War II. And I was pretty young, but I was like, hey, Grandpa, didn't you fight in World War II? And my grandmother goes, oh, no, honey, we're what you call war babies. We were born during the war.
During the war,
and I was like, sorry. I'm like 11 years old. How am I supposed to know?
I don't know when you're born.
Yeah.
Sorry I haven't taken a peek at your birth certificate recently, Grandma. Yeah.
Dude, there's something about old people, though. Especially old men. I think that generation was just a bunch of badasses.
The people that are fighting in those wars, that's a different type of person too, right?
Right. Well, my grandfather, he passed away a few years ago, but I remember just weeks leading up to him passing away, he was in his mid-70s with a pacemaker on top, putting a metal roof on by himself.
Oh, gosh.
15, 16 feet in the air.
Shocked he's dead.
Yeah. No. Wow. No, he actually passed away during surgery, getting some gunk cleaned out of his pacemaker. It was supposed to be a routine surgery. Just never woke up.
Was his time.
Yeah, and he was ready as well. But anyway, Dude, that man, even in his mid-70s, would just be outworking so many people that I knew.
Yes.
And it just, it baffles me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, it's funny that I think this goes to this broader conversation of there tends to be this attitude of looking back at a previous generation and like idolizing them a little bit, but it's usually two away. Like we look at our parents, and I think because we actually lived with our parents, for the most part, the majority of people live with at least one of their parents, if not both. You look at them and you see all the problems with maybe their marriage or like the way that they worked or what have you. There seems to be this disconnect between the generations that are next to each other, but then you get that extra. You go to your grandparents, and there always seems to be this connection between grandparent and grandchild.
Yeah.
Even if you're not related, even in like the workplace, a lot of times that 20, 25-year-old, 30-year-old will connect better with the 60, 65-year-old than the 40 to 50-year-old in there because they're too close in generation. It's more like your parents. There's actually been studies done on those connections with grandparents and how those relationships tend to be a stronger bond in the sense that they have more in common because of the way that society kind of pendulums in a lot of different ways, that the pendulum swing is the same of every other generation. So we connect and we understand. Like I think of, not that I'm trying to say that we're going through a Great Depression or anything, but like with inflation, all of a sudden you're like, well, shoot, what I used to spend on groceries is like literally double. Yeah. And I start to think, I'm going to tell my kids someday, I remember when bread cost like $4 or $5 a loaf, and it'll be $10 a loaf by the time they're our age. 100%. I mean, that's what it's going to be. You look at the way that it's going. Yeah. And I remember my grandma telling me, I remember when I bought bread for 25 cents. Yeah. Or for like a nickel or something. Yeah. Like they literally used coins to actually buy things.
That's when coins are relevant.
Yes. Which we can get into why the penny should be eliminated, and it's a huge burden on the economy. But
I mean, I've been saying that for years.
Pennies go bye-bye. I think it was some South American country. Maybe it was Colombia or Nicaragua, one of the two. And then I was there, and you would pay for something, and it would be like 6 cents would be the change, and you would just get 10 cents because they just totally eliminated all pennies.
Well, why? I mean, why even have pricing increments that way anyway?
Right.
Like, what's the point of doing one penny? I guess if you talk about millions and millions of transactions, it makes sense. Yeah. But anyway, I relate quite well as a parent to how I was parented by my grandparents growing up, if that makes sense. Like some of the things that they would have me do or try to instill, like hard work. I mean, I was a chubby little kid too, so I'm sure that my grandparents were like, get out there and go work the garden or go hop on the tractor with Pop so we can burn
this kid's got calories to burn. Yeah,
exactly. He's too well fed. But I see that same thing kind of raising my two girls, where it's like I'm intentionally and like a little bit harder on them, trying to get them to be problem solvers, try to get them to understand the value of hard work. Like in the summer and spring and the summer when the flower farm out there is in full bloom. Yep. Pun intended. They're out there with us sometimes 6-7 hours a day, like working in the garden or at least outside playing.
Because you're not. It's almost like you're trying for them to make the work really fun. Yeah. Like going out to the garden is a fun thing. Like going and doing chicken work is fun. Yeah. Even though it is a responsibility, I mean, there is a level of enjoyment to it. I mean, in order to do it, you have to find the enjoyment. Otherwise, you just get rid of your chickens. Yeah. Have a little grassy backyard and call it good, because it's not going to be fun unless you enjoy it. Right. Right. So you got to teach your kids how to enjoy it, which is a learning process, especially for two people that, like, I don't know about you, I didn't do any of this stuff before. Right. A few years ago, I didn't have chickens, like growing up, and we lived in a little subdivision, couldn't have chickens. Right. But I don't even think it wasn't even on my parents' radar. Yeah. It was like, no.
Why would I raise chickens? I can go get a dozen eggs for $1 at the store.
And there was such almost this attitude of like, well, the people that have to do that, they're poor, or they're the farmers, and they're kind of in it because it's a family thing or something. But it was almost like they were looked down upon.
Yeah.
Until very recently, I think like farmers got totally shit on. Like being a farmer was like you have to be a farmer probably because you didn't go to school. Yeah. And then you start to get into it and you go, oh shoot, these farmers are so, like, some of them are insanely educated, whether it be by a formal education, they go to like Michigan State and they learn agriculture, or it's just they've been educated their whole life on how to make food.
Yeah.
And most people have no freaking idea how their food gets made.
Yeah, and it's just like you. I mean, I didn't start diving into this until recently, but that was kind of the same thing. That, like, as we, they call chickens the gateway drug, for a reason. Yes. But as we started getting chickens and kind of thinking a little bit more, being more intentional about where's my food's coming from, who's in charge of food production, and then starting to research and listening to what farmers are saying. What are they saying about the regulations and stuff they have to go through? And then hearing the studies and experts come out about, how the food processing and all these different elements in your food. I remember when we, my youngest one, she's 4 now, but she was in daycare for most of 1 through 3, and she has a hard time with groups, with big classes. Like she likes to receive attention from negative attention, so she'll do things intentionally to get that attention from it. But I remember that there was a consistent problem, and the daycare teacher was like, you should really look at the foods you're giving her and cut out red dye 40. And if you cut out red dye 40, then there's studies show that like it could really help her attitude. Yeah,
that it exacerbates some of those ADHD kind of qualities.
Yeah, and we were already seeing a therapist, a child therapist for her and for the attitudes and how to properly address them. And I just remember thinking that like that's so dumb. Like red dye 40, like come on. Like that's really like not giving my kid fruit snacks is gonna change her entire attitude. But and then it got to the point where it was so consistent, even with the new things from the therapist and like how to handle the situations. It was still happening, and they're like, all right, let's start looking into some of this stuff. You start seeing the research, you start seeing the studies, and you're like, man, this actually could be a problem. And
it's banned in almost the rest of the world, and for some reason.
Exactly. And so it's like, oh, there's a pattern here that aligns with what this daycare teacher was saying. And then I kind of felt like an asshole because I was like, kind of making fun of the whole notion a little bit. But then we started cutting that stuff out and noticed a big difference. This is the same thing with melatonin. She won't sleep at night. Like getting her to sleep is the most difficult thing. It's an hour-long plus process every single night. And our oldest daughter never had an issue with it. But so we started like every once in a while giving her small doses of melatonin to help her fall asleep, and then she'd stay asleep. But the next day, her attitude, she would just have the worst attitude. And we cut out melatonin, and there's a significant difference in her attitude in the morning. And obviously there's a whole bunch of things about how it alters the hormones of the kids as they're growing up, and it's really terrible for kids, and it's not even good for adults. It's just something that you shouldn't consume.
Well, and it's something that you should help your body to produce more of. Yeah, right? Like, which is why one of the things that I haven't yet, but I'm like learning about is there's, you can buy, like, we've got the pot lights in here, and generally a pot light in the ceiling LED, you can toggle between a few colors, like the 5,000, somewhere in the 4,000, and then you can get down to 2,700. 2,700 is generally the lowest. It's a pretty yellow looking light. Well, they make ones that can go all the way down to 1,600 and completely eliminate all blue lights.
Really?
So you put those in, and you can have them at different times of the day. You can have your brighter, like, we just go 2,700 all the time because My wife hates the white light, so we're always at 2700. But you can be at whatever light you're comfortable at during the day, and then at a certain time, those lights will switch to 1600. All blue light is gone, which the blue light is really what keeps you kind of awake and engaged. And when all that blue light goes away, it triggers your brain to go, oh, it's time for bed.
Yeah.
And then your body, it's one component of helping your body to produce more melatonin. But
that's crazy. I didn't know that they even had.
I didn't know until I saw some post. I'll have to find it and I'll repost it. But I saw somebody post about them and I was like, yeah, I want some of those lights.
I think with more of a video production background myself, my issue is more of like just different color whites. Like when they mix, like it drives me insane.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you have a 5000 and a 2700.
Oh yeah.
In the same room, or you go in someone's house and they forgot to change the one.
Just the one. Well, that's like the pucks I just installed in the garage. One of them is like a few, like 1000 Kelvin lower than the rest of the three because I had a bunch of different boxes for when we finished the house. And I didn't realize I bought different color lights at one point, but I'm just like, every time I go in the garage, I'm like, God dang,
can't do it.
Light.
Yeah, can't do it.
But anyway, we're talking about chickens. I think that's a big part of what we want to talk about today is people that are considering getting chickens.
Yeah.
What are some things to think about? What are the things that you need to do to prepare for chickens, especially now?
Nothing. Don't do anything. Just go buy chickens.
Just go buy chickens.
Toss them in your backyard and see what happens.
Depending on where you live, that's
my wife's laughing because that's like she'll be like, "That's basically what you did, Mark."
Here's chickens. You raise them to a certain age and then you throw them outside and say good luck.
I mean, you can if you've got the fencing. Yeah, you can. Before we jump into chickens, why don't we just take a step back, because I think you're watching this from wherever you're watching this or listening to this, and you're probably doing that right now because you know us. Like, right. Safe to say, first couple episodes, you know us, and we wanted to talk a little bit about why we're doing this podcast, and like, if you're into homesteading, or maybe you're not at all, and you're just like, well, I'm listening to this show because I like you guys, and I enjoy spending time with you in this context.
Can't imagine anyone would be there, but that's okay.
Hey, speak for yourself. The self-deprecating.
Yes, that's my humor.
I think that it'll help to kind of set us up a little bit as we move forward, just like why we're here. We did talk about in the first episode, just kind of like, we got to talking about CockTalk, and it kind of went down this rabbit hole of all the things that we could talk about. And we realized that this is an idea that can work, and we were excited about it, and so that's why we're here. What do you think is something like, why should somebody listen to us instead of some other homesteading podcast? Like, what's going to set us apart here, aside from the delicious cocktails that you could, theoretically you could pause it and make this and then drink along with us, which is absolutely, that's our suggestion.
Because if they're also drinking, then we might sound funnier than what
that's
we
true.
Actually are.
That's true.
But no, I think the reasoning is you and I both very much self-made people. I think both of us kind of come from a background where it's like, hey, we feel like we have a responsibility as individuals, as Americans, as men, as fathers, husbands, to where we kind of take this role and responsibility upon ourselves to make sure that what we're doing is, and our decisions that we're making, are best for us and for our families. Yep. But then also I think too is we're both pretty new to it, and so we're making mistakes along the way, and then we're able to kind of talk about those mistakes, why we learned a lesson, and then hopefully the people listening or watching would be able to learn that lesson ahead of time.
Yeah, not make those. Well, and on top of that, being new, we also don't come from a background of it. Like a lot, I listen to different homesteading podcasts. There's a lot of really good ones, and a lot of those people, they have some kind of like, I grew up on a farm, or like I grew up in this kind of vibe. Like my parents had this. We're coming from this, like, me especially was like, I lived in the suburbs, lived in the city. Yeah. There was no consideration for like, oh, here's the things in our food. Like that really wasn't a thing when I was growing up. Nobody was teaching me to read ingredient labels or to think about what could this farmer have fed the chicken that is now on your plate.
Yeah.
Like they weren't thinking about that. And it's not a knock on the way that I was raised or like my parents. I mean, the internet has done some unbelievable things to where we now have so much more information and knowledge, good or bad, that we can know these things. And there's plenty of things that I'm ignorant to still, and I'm sure my kids are they're gonna grow up and be like, Dad had no clue that he was doing this, and that's fine. Like you said, we're trying to do the very best that we can, and almost like take it a step further.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we could do our best and not do any of this stuff. We could not have chickens, and we would still be really great dads. We love our girls. We love our spouse. Like, we could still create a great life.
Yeah.
But it's almost like this is just like taking it to the next level
Yeah.
of really taking control of at least some part of what we eat and some part of the way that we interact with neighbors and friends. Like, you're selling eggs, I'm selling eggs, we're giving things away. There's just a different relationship that forms when you go, hey, here's something that is going to literally heal you from things that are like eggs are freaking magical.
Yeah.
And vegetables grown in your garden where there's nobody's spraying tons of stuff all over it, it's different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different even from organic food where you go to the grocery store, you get something that's certified organic. Well, the organic plot is here and the non-organic plot is here, and they only spray this. What do you think happens when the wind frickin' comes? And also organic crops, they can still spray them with pesticides.
Yes.
They're just different pesticides.
Anything about pollination too. If they're right next to each other, bugs and animals are running through all of these heavily covered in pesticide vegetables and fruits and stuff like that, and they're running through the same field.
Yeah.
If there's anything left still, from kind of that single source farming.
Yeah.
But
more animals are killed in crop production than really anything else.
But
millions.
What I really like the dynamic between you and me specifically is our properties are very different. I live in the suburbs still. I have I think it's like 0.85 acres, so not even a full acre. I'm probably one of the few properties. I'm the only property in our entire subdivision, but one of probably the few in at least a 5-mile radius that actually is legally allowed to own chickens due to city ordinances. Yeah. And you have a property that's 5 acres ish.
Yeah, I guess my whatever the zoning is of my property, I'm able to kind of do a lot more because I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And I'm surrounded by other people with 5 acres or 10 or 25 or whatnot. And there's a lot of farms just north of me too. So it's definitely a different vibe, which is cool because, you can have most people I think are in your situation where they've got like, hey, I have a little backyard. And your backyard's big in comparison to a lot of people that live in the suburbs. But, you could do what you're doing in a much smaller backyard.
Yeah. Well, even
probably on a quarter acre, no problem. You could still do what you're doing pretty well.
Yeah. So, our first house, we had a quarter acre lot. The whole lot was a quarter acre. So the backyard's less than a quarter acre. And that's when we originally started growing vegetables, flowers. And then we had, I want to say it was 4 or 6 chickens. I think we had initially bought this like little bunny run from Amazon for like $120 because it's the only thing we could afford. But we wanted chickens. And we raised chickens back there, and unfortunately, in our ignorance, we would let the chickens out during the day, but we didn't have any tall fencing. There was this chain link fence that was linking all the backyards together, and they would hop over into the neighbor's yard and things like that. And the neighbor behind us was not a fan of us for whatever reason. And
too many tats,
maybe. But then also the chickens, I think,
why is that a thing?
Too much. I don't know. I think it's less and less these days. But Eventually he called the city on us, and they're like, hey, your lot's too small, like you can't have chickens. Yeah. And so there's some different elements to trying to homestead in the city with things like chickens. But we bring both of those to the table. Yeah. And like you said, as we're new and we're growing and our farms get bigger, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to talk about those mistakes, and then, kind of what we're learning from them. I feel like a lot of homesteading influencers or anything that I watch and that I see, they have 10 acres and all these different animals, and this is how you should do things. And it's like, well, that's great, but that doesn't apply to me because I don't have that kind of space. I don't have that zoning. Like, I'm not in the middle of nowhere. Right. One day, but
you can try to scale some of those things. Some things everything is scalable up, but not everything is scalable down.
Sure.
Like, you just can't. I mean, you can't have a cow. You just can't have a cow. There's just no way. I could have a cow. I don't have the infrastructure for a cow, but like I could have a cow. But those things aren't necessarily even on our radar. We're just trying to like get into doing what we're doing, which is chickens and crop production and fruit production, and all those need to grow in and of themselves. Like, you can do it 1 year, 2 years, and like you've got a lot of, it's kind of like that saying, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Yeah. And then the second best is today.
It's today. Yeah.
So that's, and then you go, oh, we did that. We planted that tree 3 years ago, and we're getting apples, or we're getting cherries, or whatever kind of fruit it is. And then you go, yes, I'm so glad that we just were like, let's just go buy some trees and plant them over here. Yeah. Because sometimes you just have to do that. Sometimes you just got to jump in and like say, like, screw it, I'm just gonna do something. You just got to do something today. Yeah. You go and you plant those trees or the crops or whatever it is. Crops are a little easier to just plant and see what happens. Yeah. Because then at the end of the year they go away anyways, for the most part, unless they're perennial ones, which there are few of. But yeah, it's a great time to get started, because this is the winter time, which every farmer will tell you. Now is the time to be thinking about your spring. Yeah. Like, this is when you actually get to process what you want to do for the spring.
Yeah, it's a huge planning period, especially in northern states where it's snowing like crazy. Obviously
there's nothing
lower
to do
zone
right
areas, in the south, you have stuff going year round, and it's just a matter of swapping out those crops for that period. But my wife with her flower farm, like, she's we're mid-January. And she's already kind of like stressing out because it's like, hey, this is supposed to be like the end of my planning period. I got to get stuff ordered. I got to get stuff ready. I got to start stuff like we do.
Yeah, anything you're planning inside, you're getting going here pretty soon.
Yeah, we've got a pretty substantial like grow space in the basement. So having seeds already in dirt on grow lights, and starting to get to that place. So when the garden opens back up and the ground unfreezes, and we're past the last frost day, that we can drop that stuff in the ground and get going on it.
Yep. And for somebody who's just starting out, it's no big deal. Don't feel like you got to start tomorrow. Yeah. You still have a lot of time. You're still going to have a really good harvest of whatever you decide to do. Even if it was April and you decided let's plant some things inside and let them grow outside, you might have a little bit later of a harvest, and that's okay. If you're just starting out, don't panic. For people that are doing it, like, we know January is like, you got to order all your stuff so that you can plant these things inside. And I think some of that is a portion of it that I think will separate us from other people, is just, we're going to take you inside and we're going to show you our planning process, and like, we're going to talk about all those things, which is kind of the informative side of all this, which is really good. But then we also are drinking booze while we do it. Yep. And I think there's this weird culture in homesteading where it's almost like you have to be like a prim and proper little person in order to be one of like the homesteader, like the official homesteader. Like, I need to have your wife should be wearing the
cottage core.
The trad wife kind of vibe, which, like, no, if that's I have friends. That's how they like have chosen to present themselves, and they love it, and they find it empowering, and it's great for them. But you don't have to be like that in order to be a homesteader. Like, you can be a hillbilly, but you can also be a professional business person who's got a freaking great garden in their backyard. You've got chickens. You can be like, you don't have to fit this mold to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think either one of us fits the mold.
No. I mean,
in so many areas of life, neither one of us fit the mold.
That's what I think is, again, it's so great. We don't come from this background, like we said, so there's a lot of things that we're just going to do wrong, and then we're not kind of focused on either it needs to look like this or it has to look like this. I feel like, and you've addressed this, I think, directly in your Instagram page, the Manly Homesteading Instagram page, where it's like, it doesn't have to be pretty.
Right.
It just has to work.
Just make it,
Just make it work.
And if you can get stuff for free, even better. Yeah. Especially starting out.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to go and spend $10,000 on fencing. That's madness.
No.
Like, go and buy the stakes that you can tap down, big metal stakes. They're like $7 T-posts, $7 each, or even cheaper than that if you buy a bunch of them. And you can run vinyl fencing that's decent, and just make sure that it's thick enough.
Yeah.
We'll post the stuff that I've bought.
Yeah.
I'll post the stuff not to buy. So like, click that link and be like, okay, I'm gonna bank that back, because don't ever buy this particular one. It's like if you get vinyl fencing that's too thin, what'll happen is those T-posts will either rip it, or you'll have you'll do your little clamps or zip ties on there, and the zip ties it'll just rip.
Yep.
And so then you'll end up with these fences that are just every other T-post is on the ground.
Like what's happened 2 years in a row is you leave the door open to the garden, and then the friendly neighborhood deer family gets in there, and then there's no way to get them out because there's only one entry. So instead, they just run through the back fence. And they tear it all down.
And they will do that. Yes. So you got to make sure you get the thicker stuff.
Got to get the good stuff.
So you don't want to go too cheap.
Yeah.
But you don't have to get metal fencing. You definitely don't need wood fencing.
Right.
Especially if you're in the suburbs, then you just want to get high quality vinyl fencing, and that can be very affordable, and you can do it in bunches. Like for me, I mean, I've got a lot of land that I want to fence in, but I don't want to have the money to buy it all right now.
Right.
Like I could go out and I could just buy enough to surround my whole property. I don't want to do that.
Right.
That's so much money to spend on fencing that I don't need. So I just buy 100 feet at a time, and I just go and I kind of, and then when I'm ready to buy more, I maybe snip some of those zip ties and just run it a little further and resituate myself. But I can do that because it's all temporary fencing. Though there's just different ways to think about it as you're starting.
Well, I think too, even people that do have a lot of property, let's say they've got 3+ acres or whatever, for the relevance of this context, 3+ acres, a lot of property, but they think, oh man, I've got 3 acres, I gotta fence all 3 acres in, I gotta do all this. But like, no, start small. Even if you have a ton of property, if you've never done this before, start small. Figure out what you like doing, and then do that, because there is a part of gardening, there is a part of caring for animals that I don't like. And so if I was to just jump in and do that on a large scale, because like this is the thing that I heard somebody tell me, this is what you have to do in order to be a homesteader, like I would hate that, and then I wouldn't enjoy doing this. And that's the biggest part I think for us, is that we both really enjoy doing this, not just because of the things that we get out of it, but we enjoy the process. Even my oldest daughter, she's 7, I think she's starting to see like the hard work up front and then the reward of the crop at the end. Even just this past season, some of the stuff she's planting, she's able to see it grow into fruition. And when it's time to go pull all the green beans, it's time to go pull the peppers and the tomatoes and stuff, she's just like, can we go check on peppers today? Can we go see if this is, and that's so cool to me, because she sees the value, the importance, and the reward from it. And that's teaching her those values of how to see that in other areas of her life as well.
We go when in the summertime, I'm like, where did my oldest daughter? Where did she go? I'm looking around. And I'm like, oh, she's out in the fruit forest. We have this fruit forest. There's a bunch of different fruit trees, and then we'll get into companion plants and all that. But there's different things you can plant in and around the trees. They work together in a symbiotic relationship. We've got a lot of berries and different fruits in there, and she's just in there. She's got a basket. But it's like for every 10 things that are going to go in her mouth, one's going in the basket. So it's like, eat, 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 eat. Okay, I'll put one in the basket. Eat, 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 eat. She's just out there eating all the fruit.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, I think it's. I'm excited about this. I'd love to talk about maybe some practical ways people can get started in this. If homesteading is becoming an interest to someone, where should they start?
Yeah. The first thing to do, if you're thinking about any kind of animals, is just figure out if you're allowed to have them from a zoning standpoint.
Yeah.
So most people start out with chickens. Just go figure out if you can have chickens, because you don't want, or if you know you can't have them, you better not have an asshole neighbor like you have. Like, you better go and grease the chute a little bit for your neighbors.
Yeah.
At very least, probably go and say, hey, I'm thinking about getting chickens. Is this like, we're technically not allowed to have them. I'll give you some eggs. Are you okay with it? I'll make sure they don't come over to your property. Like, those are, if you're not willing to have those conversations with your neighbors, you probably shouldn't go against the rules, because you'll probably end up having one neighbor who's a dick, and honestly, you might end up having that neighbor anyways. Like, you could go and you can ask people, and they can say, oh yeah, I'm cool with it, and then they see the chickens, or they just don't get a rooster.
Well, I would say that no, and I also think too, what I think I didn't find out until we had a big batch of chickens, because we had to get rid of our first ones before they started laying, was the egg song. So in the spring and summer, like, if you live in a very tight community where there's houses literally right next to each other, your neighbors are going to hear the egg songs in the morning.
100%.
So it's like, it's not a rooster crowing at sunrise, but it is a chicken. And if you've got multiple of them laying eggs, and they're doing their whole cock-a-doodle-doo thing for quite some time until they get that egg out.
Yeah. The nice thing is that based on a chicken and their laying schedule, chickens tend to lay every 25 to 26 hours. It's the generally accepted. Some chickens are a little bit different. Some chickens lay a little more. Some chickens lay a little less. But it's usually a 26-hour period. So one chicken will lay at 9 a.m., then the next day they're going to lay at maybe 10 a.m. and then 11 a.m. Slowly they'll be laying later in the day. And then once they hit the 3 o'clock, that's why you don't get an egg from one, because they kind of hit that period where they're like, I'll just lay tomorrow.
Yeah.
So the fortunate thing about that is you probably won't have every chicken laying at like 6 or 7 a.m.
Yeah.
If you get when you get chickens laying later in the day, most people are at work, or they don't really care if they hear a noise at 1 p.m.
Right.
They care if they hear a noise at 4 or 5, or like something wakes them up.
I would say that, we have 16. We have all different kinds. We have leghorns that lay pretty much 90% of the year. Yeah. And they lay almost every day, every day.
They're supposed to be, I think they're 320 eggs a year, 300. We'll give it 300.
That one...
Did my camera just die?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, great.
We got the other one running. We're good. So the leghorns laying as much as they do, they usually don't even start until about 8:39 in the morning. So by then, like, most people are up, like, you're good. Yeah. And where I live, like, we're backed up to the woods. The woods are on our left side. They're behind us. So we often hear birds of all different kinds.
Birds of prey.
Yeah, exactly. They're cawing and hooting and hollering and stuff. That was pretty good. Yeah. That was pretty good. I like that. But they're constantly making noise. So I think we kind of blend in a little bit. But I also have an HOA. So it's like, and one of the board members is literally next door. Yeah. So,
but you're allowed to have chickens, right? Like, you're as far as a...
They didn't write it in the bylaws, because I don't think that they ever thought someone would put chickens. And being the only property that can legally have them in the entire neighborhood, I don't think it was ever on their radar. Most of the people in our neighborhood, or at least on our street, are the original owners of the house from the 60s, or they've been in the house 20 plus years. Yeah. So that to them was never kind of a thought to put into any sort of HOA bylaws.
Yeah, and you back up to stuff, you don't care. It's more if you have a place where you're backing up to people. Maybe you've got people over here, like, you've got a lot of people. I would probably take the step to go and knock on those people's doors and just say like, hey, I'm thinking about having chickens.
Yeah.
We're gonna be really responsible with it. They're gonna be in their little thing. I wanted to let you know. I'd love to give you some eggs, but I just wanted to let you know, since you live close by, that we're gonna do this, and I just wanted to get your blessing with it. And you might, if you have somebody who says absolutely not, I will. If I see chickens, sorry, I'm gonna call. Well, you probably either you're gonna need to do a really good job hiding them, or you just probably shouldn't have them in that space. And that's where you can get to different types of animals that you can do. Chickens are just kind of generally accepted, like, oh, you can have chickens. It's the easiest one to do.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's necessarily true.
Okay.
I've never done quail. I've done rabbits, and you can do meat rabbits. And rabbits are in a cage that, like, a meat rabbit's going to be in a cage their whole life. It's a big cage. Don't worry, they're not like crammed in a little guy the whole time. Don't call PETA. But they're in a cage. Because you don't want them to get muscular. You don't want them like booking around. I mean, you could get a little dog pen and you can run them around. I have friends. They took one of our rabbits. They turned it into a pet, and it roams their house, and it's potty trained. I had no idea that a rabbit could do this.
You can potty train rabbits?
This rabbit is potty trained. It goes poop in its little area, and it just like walks around their house. It jumps up on the kids' beds and like sits with them. My mind was blown when they're sending me videos of these rabbits. It's like, your rabbit is literally a dog. His name's Stuart.
Stuart the rabbit. Shout out to Stuart.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, a rabbit could be a pet, but you can also do them with meat, and it's good meat because it's not like a typical like go hunting for a rabbit and that rabbit is like super lean and fast. These are chunky, bred for meat. Like that's they've been pared down. They're good for meat. So you can do that, and you can do quail, and you get the quail eggs, and you can eat the quail. So there are other options to chickens if you can't have them. So if you can't have chickens, or you're like not sure that you want to have them, you want something that's a little more confined, you've got like a shed or a garage.
Yeah.
You can do other animals that will get you lots of meat. They'll get you lots of eggs. A quail will get you lots of eggs. They're littler, they're smaller eggs. They're just as nutritious, and those things can reproduce a lot quicker than a chicken. So you can get a lot of quail if you want, if that's something that you want to do. So to say, well, I can't get chicken, so I can't homestead. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, look for a way around what you want to do, or look for a way that you can do it. Don't just say, well, I'm not allowed to do it, so therefore I can't.
I knew some people that lived in like in our last neighborhood I was telling you, it's a really tight-knit group. They lived in the same general area, same type of neighborhood, just across the street from us. And they had their entire coop actually in their garage where they would keep the chickens, because they weren't allowed to have them. And then they built a run that would go outside. So they would have a long run that would go outside and let them kind of roam around outside. Yeah. So there are definitely ways to kind of sneak, some chickens if you really want them bad enough. Right. But I think too, even homesteading itself is not even directed towards livestock. I think the idea of homesteading is just kind of taking more responsibility and more intention in kind of what you're consuming, what you're doing in your everyday lives. Like, trying to make sourdough bread. Or
sourdough bread is maybe the more is the gateway to everything anyways, because it's so simple to do. Like, just post on Facebook, does anyone have a starter that I can take from? Yeah. People will give you their starter. Like, a sourdough person will happily allow their starter to become someone else's starter. Yeah. Like, their starter gets to have babies. That's exciting. Yeah. And then you've got, like, the starter my wife started. She started it from scratch. She gave it to one of our friends who he went ham with it. Like, he feeds that thing like, you have to feed your starter and it'll make your starter grow. He feeds it way too much, so he ends up with all this extra the discard, and then he makes amazing foods with the discard. He's like, oh, I made these cookies. Oh, I made these buns. I made bagels. I made he makes almost like anything you can think of that would be with bread, pizza. Like he just makes it with all the discard.
Man.
And it's delicious.
That's awesome.
So much fluffier.
I hear a lot of the times too, people that have gastrointestinal issues, or a lot of people that maybe think they have celiac or they have some sort of intolerance to gluten.
They have a tolerance to glyphosate. It's really what it is.
Yeah. So when you start making your own sourdough and you're making your breads at home and you're using all natural ingredients, you are getting all of that glyphosate out, and it actually you can process
then the glyphosate, hopefully, if you get organic stuff, hopefully there's no glyphosate on it. But yes, it does also eat the gluten. Mm-hmm. Like the bacteria is eating the gluten, so you get a much lower content of gluten. Which, when you're having some of these breads and you're like at 21% gluten in your bread, it's high for somebody. My brother has celiac. Like we know people have celiac. Like it's high for them, but sourdough, a lot of them can handle it.
Yeah.
Or it's just it doesn't cause them any problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like my wife has celiac, and I know that. For some people, you've been traumatized so much having celiac and consuming bread that you're just like, I don't care what you say, I'm not going to try it.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. But there are a lot of people out there that have, a smaller intolerance to it that could actually begin eating good bread, because gluten-free bread just does not taste good.
Yeah, and right. No, it definitely doesn't. And honestly, if you're like, oh, sourdough, I saw that at the store, I can go buy it. So the sourdough that we make is flour is your starter, and then your flour, salt, and water. And that's it. There's no other ingredients in there. You go to the store and try to buy sourdough, and unless you want to pay $10 a loaf, you are going to find many, many more ingredients in there. Yeah. And it's not the same. Not the same at all. Unless you go to maybe you go to a bakery and they actually make it in there. Like that's a little different. But if you go to a chain grocery store and buy sourdough bread, it's not anywhere close to the same. So don't think that you can just go buy sourdough bread instead.
Even a chain grocery store that has a bakery in it, usually they're putting a ton of stuff in there because they're getting pre-made mixes or whatever, or they're getting I remember I used to work at a restaurant that was a chain, and we had a commissary, so everything was made in the commissary and then delivered fresh to the restaurants for them to use on a daily basis. But even still, like in that commissary, there are things that are just are created in batches for a reason. So when they distribute that, there could be all kinds of things that are in there as well. Yep.
Yeah, very true. So there are a lot of places to start. I think it's just best to pick one.
Yeah.
Like pick one simple thing. And like maybe baking, like the idea of making your own bread, for me is like, I don't really want to make my own bread. My wife does it, and that's great. Like she enjoys it. She's like, oh yeah, you gotta, like, exactly how much to put in here. And like she experiments, and she learns, she makes a batch. She goes, it's too this, too that, too fluffy, or it's too dense. And she experiments as she goes. It is a very, I'll say like a scientific process, but it's also this labor of love. It takes a while to make it, but it's delicious when it's done. Even the stuff that's like, she's like, this isn't good, it's too thick. I'm like, this is still amazing because it's warm bread. Yeah. Like warm bread is always going to trump. Bread. Yes. But there are other things that you can decide to do today that have nothing to do with growing your own food. And really, maybe it just starts with going outside. Yeah. All right. Like homesteading, so much of it is just saying no to a screen, not even all the time, but just saying no to a screen. And going, instead of the screen, let's go make our life better outside. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, we talked about too, being in small, neighborhoods, small properties and stuff. Getting permission for something like a chicken. That may be a daunting process for some. But what you don't have to ask permission for is planting vegetables, fruits, even flowers. If you don't really want to grow your own food, but maybe you want to look at something nice, growing flowers. I think that for me, I think growing flowers seems more complicated than growing fruits and vegetables. Especially the ones that don't come back. Like just go plant a blueberry bush, a raspberry bush somewhere. Yeah. And like maybe if you have deer, if you don't have a fence, you might have to put a little guy up. But especially if you have a fenced-in backyard, oh my gosh, the whole entire fence should just be surrounded by berries. Yeah, like why not? Berries are so freaking expensive. Yeah, especially now in the winter, where I mean, you could freeze your berries and stuff, and that would really be the only way you'd get them in the winter. But even in the summertime, you go to the store and you're like, all right, so I get a little pint. So for a pound of blueberries, a lot of times you're paying like $10 a pound.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And you can pay $10 for a plant.
Well, and to think about it too is that if you're in the north and it's winter everywhere, those blueberries aren't coming from anywhere near you. They're coming from across the country.
Right.
You know, so how long have since they've been on that bush?
Yep.
Since they were picked, they're processed, they're taken, they're washed, you get them, and by the time you get them home and actually eat them, it could be weeks.
Yeah.
And it's not fresh at that point, and so to be able to walk outside or walk to your basement or your freezer or your garage or whatever, grab frozen pack, thaw them out and be able to use them, or keep them frozen, throwing them in a smoothie, that there's a difference. There's such a difference in the taste and the feeling you get knowing that exactly where your food is coming from is really great. But I mean, for me, the first thing I would tell people to look at is look up your zone for where you live. There are zones.
Really easy to do. Just go and look at your
Google
county
it.
map. Whatever county you live in, if you live in Genesee County, you just go and you type Genesee County zoning map. And it'll pull up a map. There'll be a map of your whole place, and it'll tell you, here's your zones, and you can find your house, look what zone you're in. And from there, it's pretty simple to just go zoning laws for this, and you can just go find them. You can probably even type in livestock.
When I'm even talking about your climate zone as well.
Oh, that too. Oh, yeah.
So taking a look at your climate zone and be like, hey, I'm in.
That's even more simple.
Right. Yeah. You can Google climate zone for whatever city you're in or part of the state you're in, and you'll be able to see, okay, I'm in 7B. Great. Okay. And then you go and you Google what are the easiest vegetables to grow in 7B.
Yeah.
And then you're going to see article after article of just lists of different vegetables, and find vegetables that you're going to eat. Find ones that you maybe get regularly that you like, and then start looking up what does it take to grow them.
It is very tempting when you start. This happened to me. Katie's laughing at me. I tend to really jump into things and get fired up about I'm going to do way more than I actually am going to do. And I bought so many seeds. I bought seeds for things that I'll never eat. But I was like, I can grow these things and I'll sell them or I'll give them away, and it'll just be it'll be cool to grow them, which I mean, you totally can do. But starting out, just pick, honestly, what are the easiest things to grow? Lettuce.
Yeah.
Lettuce is super simple. Carrots are those things just grow.
Yeah.
You don't have to do a whole lot to grow a carrot. So
garlic's the same way.
Garlic
is really simple.
Yep. And garlic, honestly, you can, as soon as you really should have planted already, but but you can just go, as soon as the ground is a little thawed, you can go and plant garlic. Yeah. And it will grow. It is almost impossible to kill garlic.
Yeah.
Unless the soil's really bad or something digs it up, you're probably going to be fine with garlic, and it'll protect all your other plants against certain types of bugs and beetles.
Yeah. Yeah, there's obviously there's some plants that you have to kind of focus on a little bit more when in battling pests and things like that, finding all natural ways and to keep the pests
oils
off.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we'll do I'm sure we'll do a whole episode
dive into
on
all that. Yeah, because I had to learn a huge lesson this past year about how to properly protect broccoli and cauliflower, and all of my
all the brassicas are
broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts just got completely destroyed by caterpillars. I've never seen so many caterpillars in my life in one area or even on one plant.
And it's funny because you're like, where did they come from?
Yeah,
I've never that's the same as those the Japanese beetles and stuff that get on things, and you're like, where were you guys?
Yeah, where do
you guys hide out waiting for some poor fool like me to plant my trees of fruit? Yeah, and you're just gonna show up and I mean, you can catch those things in these little bags.
Yep, that's what we did.
There's just hundreds of them in a bag, and you're like, what in the world? I've never seen one before.
And you pick up the bag, and it just reeks.
Yes.
It is the worst smelling thing that I've ever smelled.
And there are some pests are as simple as you just go and you pick them off every couple of days, and it's fine, and that's all you have to do. They're not super invasive. There's other ones that are they're just ridiculous, and you have to, you got to take a little, like put a little extra in. And that's something where you have to know, yes, I bought this, let's say like a blueberry plant for $10, and you bought some different trees. You have to almost in your head go, all right, well, this is going to cost me, I'm going to have to pay for some other things to protect against these things. And there are all natural ways to do it. I mean, there's like, there were ants all over this cherry tree, and I took saran wrap that was like a double-sided, it was like a sticky, I think it was like double-sided tape. I took double-sided tape and I wrapped it around the trunk.
Oh, wow.
And they try to crawl up it, and then they just get stuck on the tape. And like, it literally worked. And I didn't get ants up on the tree anymore.
That's crazy. I never would have thought about double-sided tape.
And it works. And it's so simple. It doesn't hurt the tree at all. Even if the tree is growing, you can always just, like every couple weeks you just go and you cut the tape off and you just rewrap it so that but at the same time, sometimes you just need to get some little ant traps so that the ants go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, there's also, ants can be good for other things, and that's where you have to understand there's a reason why those bugs show up. Mm-hmm. If your plants are unhealthy and they're not doing well, bugs are gonna just pound that thing because it's easy to get into. But when a plant's doing really well, it actually is designed to protect itself against pests.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of stuff. We'll go into all that's a little bit more advanced, but as far as just getting started.
Well, and two, we're going to be addressing a lot of Q&A style questions that. Yeah. So, like, if our listeners, if you're watching or whatever, and you have questions on, hey, like this is kind of my situation for my home. How do I start a garden here? Like, we'll happily lend opinions of where you can start and what you can do, and if there's things that you're running across where like pest issues or whatever, like how do I get rid of these things? We'll do our best to answer them with the knowledge that we have.
Yeah, or just like, what tool do I get to do this? Or like, what do you recommend? There's so many options for every application.
Yeah.
And there's probably only needs to be like 2, but you can get all these, you can get crazy with the I'll say like the innovation of things, and a lot of those things aren't necessary, but some of them are really nice to have. So we'll go through all that.
I think you and I are also big on kind of no-till gardening.
Yes, no-till gardening.
So I think that's going to be fun to talk about.
Or a till one time and then never till again.
Yeah,
that's.
If
you have to get rid of your grass, you have to get rid of your grass somehow.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to not tilling your soil.
Yeah.
And we'll go into all that.
Yeah, yeah. I did want to ask a question to you.
Okay. That
is unrelated to homesteading. My 1-year-old daughter. Oh, her name's Fia. I don't really care if we say her name. It's going to pop out. So Fia is turning 1, and I'm debating whether or not we want to have a birthday party for her. We did the one for our oldest, and it's fine. Like, it's not like she has any recollection of it. And honestly, the best part of the first birthday was not even the party. I think you and your wife took our cake smash pictures for that one. And those are like the pictures that we go back and look at anyways.
Yeah.
So we're like, do we just do a cake smash picture thing and like call it good? What do you think about no birthday party for your 1-year-old?
Honestly, I actually my wife and I have gotten into a couple intense discussions. They weren't even that intense, but we've had
as long as they
end
in a good intense discussion, it's okay.
I'm kind of under the guise of they're not going to remember it. They're not going to know that we never did it. Why would I spend all this energy and time and money doing this? It's not for me.
Right.
Birthday party is for the individual.
No, it's for you. That's why you do it, right? It ends up being for you.
It's definitely, I understand, like I can understand first kid. Like it's brand new, like it's a 1-year-old of your first kid, like you're going to want to remember it. Absolutely. Do a cake smash and do some pictures. I am not the type of person that's like, we're going to invite 20 people over. We're doing Paw Patrol everything. There's going to be cupcakes in different colors and we're baking them all for, like, I'm not that type of person. I think it kind of comes from though that like I don't ever remember having like any elaborate birthdays growing up. I don't like we would have
so like
friends
birthdays
over.
Weren't really valued a lot. growing up?
Not as much. I think it's like, yeah, happy birthday, like we're gonna do something fun, but it wasn't like a whole family ordeal. It was usually like, hey mom, I want to have some friends over. Like those are the only birthdays I remember. And then the friends would sleep over, we play games all night, we eat a bunch of junk food, and then we go to sleep and wake up at 2 p.m.
Sure.
Right.
But that's like later. That's when
that's what I'm saying is like
middle school.
You don't remember all of the ones when you were younger. I don't have any recollection of a birthday before like the age of 12 or 13.
You know what birthday I do remember? When I was in 2nd grade, I was supposed to have this big birthday party, and my grandpa was taking me to the Royal Ontario Museum, which is basically like Canada's great museum. Like I think there's a bunch of different.
From all the great
huge sections. There's huge, and I wanted to go there. Yes, I wanted to go there because they had a huge dinosaur section. So I was super into dinosaurs. I'm like 7 years old,
Sure.
Love dinosaurs. My grandpa's going to take me to this place, and I get this awesome birthday party. Well, for some reason, on this particular day in March, it would have been like a couple weeks before my birthday. My birthday is in mid-April, and my teacher asked me, my teacher's name was, this was 1st grade. Yeah, it was 1st grade because it was Mrs. Felix. I still remember this lady's name. She asked me, can you go to my desk and get like scissors or something like that? Sure, I'll go. Okay, yeah, sure. So I go to her desk and she told me where they were. I open the drawer. I see the scissors, but I also see some candy.
There you go.
And I mean,
you gotta get it.
Fucker puts candy right there.
Who does that?
I mean,
it's a reward for getting the scissors.
How are you going to tell a kid to go get some scissors? Like, I think I was set up.
That's what it was.
I was set up. She like wanted me to fail.
It's entrapment.
It's like, hey, young 16-year-old boy, go up to this bedroom and just grab my wallet for me. And then inside that bedroom is like some naked woman. What are you gonna like run away?
I'm not gonna answer.
It was candy in the teacher's desk. It was so easy, so I took it. But I was a freaking idiot. Like I could have taken that candy, pocketed it, called it good. But no. I think I was a little stupid, but also I think I had huge balls for what I did next. Because I went to that teacher and said, "Here's your scissors. By the way, I forgot to eat my candy during snack time. Can I eat it right now?" Why did I ask permission? And she just goes, and this teacher's clutch. Because I think a lot of teachers would have said, "Isn't that my candy?" No, she said, well, why don't you just go put that in your bag and you'll have to have it later because snack time's over. I said, okay. I went and I put it in my bag. She calls my mom. Tells me, hey, I think Mark stole candy from my desk, which was like super unlike me. I was like a good little kid, right?
Yeah.
And so I get home. I'm not even thinking about it anymore. It's like in my bag. I think I forgot all about it. I hadn't even eaten it or anything. I get home and my mom's like, did you steal candy from your teacher? I was like, how did she know? How does she know? She's like, yeah, you said that. She said that you went up to her and asked her if you could eat it. And I think my mom said, she's like, what were you thinking by telling her about it?
You just eat it.
And she's like, did you eat it on the bus? I was like, no, I forgot all about it. I was like, it wasn't even that important to me. And I was like, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have done that. I was 7. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
My mom, as a punishment, she said, you now have to make a choice. You either get to go to the museum with your grandpa or you get to have a party with your friends. And I didn't want to let my grandpa down, so I chose my grandpa. Because my grandpa was so excited to go with me, too, and take me. I was like, my friends, maybe I had foresight as a 7-year-old, was like, I'm never going to, like, these people aren't going to be in my life forever, but my grandpa will be until the end kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, so I chose my grandpa. And that was that. And my mom straight canceled my birthday party. Wow. She did not relent. Canceled the birthday party. Told everybody that they couldn't come anymore.
Canceled. That's crazy.
I guess the punishment worked because I don't think I ever stole anything ever again.
You still had to see your dinosaurs.
I still feel like it was a little harsh.
That was a lot for a little piece of candy.
7-year-old in 1st grade. My goodness. But yeah, I mean, I've never stolen a candy out of a teacher's desk ever again.
Just other places.
Just other places, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm much better at hiding it now.
I just eat it right then. But no, that's what I think, man. It's just, you, as a kid, you don't really remember your birthdays, in my opinion, until you're at least 5 or 6 or 7.
Or you have a traumatic experience like I had.
Or you have a traumatic experience, right?
Like it was traumatic.
I would say my 4-year-old's kind of getting to the point. She knows where her birthday is. You know, she wants to invite people from her school. You know, we did that, I think, last year. Invited some kids from her school. And then our backyard was full of a bunch of really small children. And it is pure chaos, as a kid's party usually is. And then you're talking to people you don't know, which I don't really enjoy that, like talking to a bunch of parents just because I have to. Yeah, it's like, oh, I got to be a host and we got to talk.
Kids go to the same school. Neat.
Yeah, and that's the only bit of thing you have in common.
What's this garden you have over here? Don't touch it.
That's what it was. Everyone's like, oh, I love the flower, garden. Let me see the flowers. And so like my wife is doing tours through the garden.
You think I could get some of those cucumbers, brother?
Yeah. Let me get one of them peppers off you.
And it's totally different. I get when your kid is asking for it. That's probably the point where it's like, hey, this is your kid wants a party. Yeah. Are you going to tell your kid no?
Yeah. But
at the same time, you could also, you just go, well, we're going to have a party with these people, and this is who we're going to invite. We're going to invite the people.
Yeah.
I like that they have kids that are also your friends, which is generally what we do.
It's pretty much what we do. I think there's a progression that kind of happens, at least from what we've seen for us is, the first couple, I think it makes a lot of sense. Year 1, year 2, maybe even year 3 of just like doing like a family get together. And then as you get older, and it's like, hey, we're inviting friends that also have similar age kids that are also the kids' friends and things like that, for a year or 2. And then you kind of get into that point where it's like, all right, I got friends at school and things like that. You start inviting a bunch of people you don't know. And, that's, I think personally, the first year, just having some good photos of a cake smash or just your family hanging out and celebrating you, I think is more than enough.
That's where I think we're leaning. Is that we've got some photos scheduled. We're gonna do those photos and we'll go to the aquarium. Mm-hmm. I think that's where we'll end up. Cool. And now because we've both been like, do we do this? Now we're less than a month out, so having a party is just. We're not having a party.
Right. You're going to just let time decide.
I don't like when people are like, hey, we're having a birthday party in next week. Yeah. For our kid. Like, it's fine if it's like for you, hey, we're having a birthday party for Joel. All right, well, I'll just show up and we'll hang out. And that's fine. Yeah. But when it's a kid party, it's like, well, I have to think about this.
I have to plan.
Yes.
I got to buy a gift. I got to figure out, okay, what things do I have
also,
to
I hate gifts at kids' parties.
I agree.
I just have I feel like the stuff you get is just junk. Most of the presents, and gosh, if people are watching this that have bought my kids presents, I'm sorry, but most of it, you're just like, why did they buy us? This thing's too big. It takes up too much space. It's in the let's get it. Yeah. Let's get it in the basement. And how do we make this? There's almost a progression of toys in our house where the toy is new. It's on this particular shelf or somewhere in the living room. Then maybe it'll transfer over to the bedroom because we'll want to move it. Or we'll cycle out toys and make them disappear for a little while and bring them back in. But usually, then it goes in the room. And then it's like, let's send that one to the basement. Then it goes to the basement. It's hidden. And then invariably, a kid goes through a box. And they're like, hey, where was this toy all this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, you
cycling toys, I feel like is so underrated.
Oh, it is.
Don't throw away the toys. Don't give them away. Put them in a giant bin. Stick them in storage somewhere. And then 3-4 months later...
Get a storage locker for all the toys you get from the birthday parties you throw.
Even if they're terrible toys, it doesn't matter. They're new to them. Or they're they're reminded, oh yes, I remember I liked this toy. And you can get a couple hours of peace and quiet every couple months.
Well, and also, there's certain things where, somebody gives your, let's say your 1-year-old birthday party. It's really hard to buy a present for a 1-year-old. So a lot of times people buy something that maybe is out of their stretch a little bit, or they can use it for a little bit. You put it away and then you bring it back out, and suddenly it's got new life because now they can engage with the other portions of it that are for a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. And we've found that for like the toys for our 1-year-old, our 3-year-old plays with them but she plays with them completely different.
Right.
Or she uses them in her imagination and character kind of stuff. And
I remember I was over at your house recently, and she kept bringing Fia's toys up and being like, "Look at this, pressing this button." It's like, I don't think this is your toy. Fia's just like, "The hell? Why you take my toy?"
Yeah, yeah. Fia, if she's into one toy, then of course the other one's going to be into it. And,
yeah.
Yep. That little rivalry thing where you're like, this is such a stupid. Like, just go grab a different toy. It doesn't matter. I will give you all the toys. You will always have something to do. You don't need to have her think. But, anyways, well, I think that's our show for this episode, and we'll jump in. I mean, we're gonna jump into more homesteading. I think we're gonna talk a little bit of Super Bowl, a little bit of football, a little bit of like. I know we promised conspiracies. We didn't get too many into them today, but there's a lot of that out there, and I think with the Super Bowl being soon, relevant. There's lots to jump in there too.
Yep.
And how it all ties back to homesteading. How does the Super Bowl tie back to homesteading? We'll find out.
We're going to find out. We're also going to bring in 2 guests to talk about Super Bowl stuff. We've got one of our buddies, Derek, who actually writes regularly for a publication for sports, and then another friend of ours, Nick, who actually just recently started a sports betting company.
I want to get into that.
So
I don't want to get into it, but I want to talk to him about it.
Yeah,
I'm scared to get into sports betting.
I couldn't.
I just can't.
I couldn't do it. I didn't even like the stock market stuff. I couldn't imagine like something that's actually reliant on individuals' performance.
Right, true.
But we're gonna
and
get
none
into,
of it's rigged. None of it's rigged.
Right. If you are a fan of like really diving into like the deep statistics of it, Nick is going to be a great person to kind of listen to and all the information he has to bring along.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports guy, so this is going to be interesting because I have zero things to bring to the table except knowing what the teams' names are and where they're from.
There you go.
I think.
Well, we don't know. We don't even know who's in the Super Bowl yet, so it's okay.
No, we don't. Well, we'll speculate.
Yes. And we'll keep bringing all the homesteading things as we're getting into the season of planting. I think we'll probably spend a little bit of time showing some setups of planting and whatnot. And you can follow our account, so you can find us CockTalk the podcast. I know some of you are like, I have to type in the word cock.
Yes.
Cock is just a chicken. All right, it's a male chicken. Don't worry about it. CockTalk the podcast. Find us on Instagram and TikTok. So you can find our stuff on there too.
No, TikTok.
TikTok?
TikTok.
All right. That's our show. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit, and we'll see you in the next one.